Jeffrey Epstein, billionaire, also pedophile, also convicted and admitted trafficker of girls, died in custody at the Metropolitan Correctional Facility, a Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan. Only 2 such facilities there. High-profile folks are kept at this facility. For some reason, Jeffrey Epstein was able to commit suicide at this facility, even though he had attempted it already and was placed on suicide watch. Seems a little strange. So there's been a lot of talk about it. What I thought was important to do was to open up phone lines and let my people have a conversation, let my people speak. I'm tired of hearing the talking heads talk about it endlessly ad nauseum on cable media. What say you, people? Just to give a little bit of context about the details so we can all kind of agree or at least have a starting point for disagreement, which is just as important. I want to play a clip with you, for you, show you, that will encapsulate what's going on where we are now.
Something had to take place. There's an incredible photo on the New York Post website right now that shows Epstein being wheeled in by paramedics this morning, and they're working hard to try to revive him as he's wheeled into the downtown hospital where he was pronounced dead about 7:39 this morning. Again, he was found around 6:30 this morning. We are told now from 5 sources he was alone in his cell and that suicide appears to be the leading cause here. But of course, as you're hearing, there will be an investigation. In the previous incident, there was less clarity, in part because he shared a cell with a roommate. And the defense lawyer for that other inmate had said the 2 were getting along fine, no assault took place, and that Epstein apparently had tried to take his own life in that previous incident. How serious an attempt that was, there's a lot of debate and question about that, whether it was just a cry out for attention. Again, we are told from multiple sources he was having a very difficult time inside the MCC. He's an accused child sex offender. He is accustomed to the life of luxury with his mansions, and now he's sitting in the MCC, which is a very secure facility where drug dealers, terrorists, you name it, are held in that facility. He was put in a separate wing for high-risk inmates. First he had a roommate, then after that initial incident, he was moved to his own cell and for a time was on suicide watch. We only have one official, but it's a good one official telling us he was recently taken off suicide watch, but remained in an isolated cell. We're waiting to hear clarity on that detail from the Bureau of Prisons to see exactly when and if he was taken off suicide watch and what that meant for the items and clothing he had in his own cell, because if you're on suicide watch, we're told there are no sheets, there are no blankets, that you are watched quite carefully. But of course, we also hear stories about people who are on suicide watch and in isolation, and they wind up using their pants or whatever minimal clothing they are provided. So the question is, how closely was he being watched? Is the expectation 24/7? Or is it hourly? Is it every 3 hours? What is the correct protocol with an inmate like this? And I think those are some of the questions that need to be raised and need to be answered. But everything we're being told from now 5 sources is that this is an apparent suicide.
Jonathan Dean, great reporter. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you being here to give us some answers on that.
We're back. First thing I want to do is clear up something that I heard this gentleman say that needs to be cleared up right now. Jeffrey Epstein was not an accused sexual predator nor accused molester of children. He is a convicted sexual offender. He's an admitted convicted sexual offender. He was required to register as a sex offender wherever he lived in the United States. This does not require discussion. There can be no discussion about this. This is why this case is back and forth in front of us. It's the hypocrisy of our democracy, of our the betrayal of the victims in that initial case, where Jeffrey Epstein could serve really basically no time, 6 months at a Club Med, didn't wear an ankle bracelet, and be home detention, serving home detention situation for about 5 hours a day. So make no mistake about it. What he's talking about here about being an accused sex offender, that's hogwash, that's BS. So let's make sure we do that right. People are jumping to conclusions and blaming this on Trump or Clinton. First thing we need to do is try to come up with something that's based in fact or based in closest fact as we can get about, is this actually a suicide or is this a murder? Because that's the first question I think needs to be asked. So intelligent minds, logical people, we need to look into that. Though, don't get me wrong, I have a problem with the media who want to paint this. When you say the word conspiracy, guys, it has a negative connotation. We'll never get beyond that. That's the way it's always going to be. They created it so that it would have a negative connotation. That's where the term conspiracy theorist was conjured up, to detract from accusations about our government dealings from lay people or investigators. That's why that term exists. Now, what I don't appreciate and what I've noticed over the weekend is a propensity of people to accuse good people, good actors, regular people, taxpaying citizens of this country as being conspiracy theorists, like we're whack jobs, nut jobs, because we apply the same logic that we would apply in any other case to this case. We have a powerful person. We have a person. Strip away his power. We have a person who has information that could be damaging to a number of high-profile individuals. As I tweeted out, got like 2,000 likes, 500 retweets, something crazy like that. Did pretty good. Reached about 200,000 people. I said, if someone in the hood who's turning state's evidence, says he's going to snitch in order to get reduced time, ends up dead, no one calls you a conspiracy theorist or a whack job for assuming maybe some people he was snitching on had something to do with it. No one would call you crazy. No one would say that you're unpatriotic, that you're crazy, that you're just throwing stuff against the wall, that they would all say, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Because when Darrell, no disrespect to Darrell's in the audience, but when Darrell or Jose or Cody, when Darrell, Jose, or Cody, or Kim, regular guys who are involved in criminal activity, get a little cold feet about doing a whole lot of time and start running their mouth, well, things happen to them. And nobody goes, hey, you can't say that. See, the only difference here is that in this situation, Jeffrey Epstein is very high profile and connected. And when you say that about Jeffrey Epstein, who could benefit or who would benefit from Jeffrey Epstein being dead suddenly in his cell? Well, it would blow back on people who have power. No one cares if someone blames you. Yeah, a friend of yours dies in jail and he has dirt on you, no one would care about people thinking you had something to do with it. That'd be nothing. Screw you. But let it be notable individuals. So hypocritical is what they are. All right? That we can't even apply basic logic that we're using for the rest of us. That's how being the untouchable, elitist, rich bastards, well-connected people, that's how great it is. You're above scrutiny of the average individual. That's how that works. Okay? We can't even have the thought. We can't even voice the thought. This video will be not demonetized due to that because we can't even have the conversation. But we're not doing this for the monetization. We're doing this because this is what the community needs. Now, this article by Judith Miller, Jeffrey Epstein case is almost impossible to kill yourself in jail. Here's how I know. Here are a few things I know firsthand about being in jail. First and foremost, you have virtually no control over your life and your surroundings. You can't get so much as an aspirin without authorization. In most jails, you can't wear a belt or shoelaces or keep a razor in your cell. You have no privacy, no sense of dignity, and no rights. And in a well-run jail, high-profile prisoners have virtually no chance of killing themselves. Yeah, it's pretty much improbable. Now, how does Judith Miller come to this? How does she know this? She said firsthand, well, see, she is a journalist who would not turn over her source, who spent time in jail because of it, because she has something that's very rare called journalistic ethics. So she went to jail. That's how she knows. Jeffrey Epstein, 66-year-old financier with powerful American and foreign friends, was about to stand trial for allegedly sexually abusing dozens of girls. Many of them underage. It's particularly unfathomable and outrageous. Attorney General William Barr clearly agrees, saying that he was appalled to have learned that Epstein was found dead at 6:30 on Saturday morning at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Lower Manhattan, the MCC. Barr instructed the department's inspector general to investigate precisely what happened, why, who, what, where, how. Now, here goes the facts that you need to know, guys. Epstein was placed on suicide watch on July 23rd. After being found semi-conscious in his cell with some form of marks around his neck, the prison officials described his condition as being the result of a failed suicide attempt. He was removed from suicide watch 6 days later, on July 29th, and returned to a segregated area of the prison with extra security known as the Special Housing Unit. Why Epstein was removed from suicide watch to begin with will be a subject of a DOJ investigation. Yeah. Attempted suicide, according to officials, an apparent suicide attempt, results in 6 days being on suicide watch and then put in a special unit, as we know the result of that. While the officials from the Department Bureau of Prisons, which oversee or supervises the MCC and other federal prisons, have said little about Epstein's death other than the claim that Epstein hanged himself, officials told them Sunday that the prisoner's psychological team had evaluated Epstein. Very important. A team was evaluating Epstein. What they found out, Tim Black? They found out on a daily basis after his alleged suicide attempt and found him to be no risk to himself. Yeah, we're getting a little bit beyond anecdotal here. We're getting a little bit beyond just people pulling stuff out of their behind because it sounds cool to say. A psychological team. The prison's psychological team, not his legal team. The prison's psychological team evaluated him on a daily basis and found him to be no threat to himself. Officials said that Epstein had met for many hours each day with his legal team, and both he and his lawyers had repeatedly assured the prison that he did not want to kill himself and had asked MCC to remove him from the suicide watch. So the reason why he was taken off suicide watch was a combination effort of the prison officials and his own legal team and himself. Officials say that under the prison's rules and procedures, Epstein was supposed to be given a cellmate and monitored by prison guards every 30 minutes. This should have happened 24 hours a day after being removed from suicide watch. So even outside of suicide watch, I've seen people get this wrong. I've seen people get it incorrect here, okay? And maybe there's different reports going out, I don't know. Even without being on suicide watch, the fact that he had allegedly attempted suicide, this was the conditions. This was the procedure. The procedure was every 30 minutes they want to check on him anyway. That's notwithstanding suicide watch. Prison experts believe that having a cellmate helps deter suicide. Neither officials nor Epstein's legal team would comment on whether those procedures were followed. But at least one official familiar with the episode said that they were not. So at least one official says he wasn't checked every 30 minutes for 24 hours a day, as was required, and he did not have a cellmate, which also was required. I wonder why he doesn't have to stand the same level of security that others would have to stand. I wonder why the rules have been bent. Now, that's when we come into a situation where we're having to guess. There's no doubt that rules were changed and modified. But why? Now, Epstein had a cellmate before his initial alleged suicide attempt, But cellmate Nicholas Tartaglione, former police officer facing murder charges, stand-up guy, obviously, pillar of society, was not returned to share a cell with him after Epstein was placed on watch and then removed from the list. The official said that Epstein was alone in his cell for some time before his death, again in violation of the prison's rules and procedures. Suicide supposedly nearly impossible at ultra-secure Jeffrey Epstein lockup. Even though it was supposedly so secure, Epstein apparently managed to hang himself in his cell in the special housing unit on the 9th floor of the Federal Metropolitan Correctional Center at about 6:30 a.m. Saturday. He had been on suicide watch there, presumably without access to a belt or shoelaces, and closely monitored by guards. Now, this is all standard protocol, as we stated before. Now, here goes some more details about the MCC, the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan. Suicide at the jail, which serves mainly as a holding facility for about 765 men and women awaiting trial for federal crimes of all levels, is rare. A review of published stories found only one such death in the past 21 years. See, it gets even more murky. See, they want you, me, all of us, to be kooky conspiracy theorists. I wonder how many people have passed through this prison in the last 21 years, because that was the last time there was a suicide at the jail. 21 years ago. This is suspicious as hell, isn't it not? Isn't it? A review of published stories found only one such death in the past 21 years, the 98 suicide of South Philadelphia drug kingpin Luis Torra, who reportedly hanged himself. I bet if we go look up Luis Torra, I think people are going to question if he hung himself as well. I think anyone who's questioning if this was a suicide or murder is very much within their bounds to do so. I think that anyone who would look at this situation, the facts that I laid out, not my opinions, based on what we know, based on the history of the complex, based on the history of the prison guards, based on the procedures of that prison, can come back with the idea that maybe something went foul here, something was done to Jeffrey Epstein, not by Jeffrey Epstein. I think that's very much a reasonable stance to take. If this happened in Mexico, right? Let's just say it happened in Mexico. All of a sudden El Chapo's dead. Suicide. In a very well-secured facility that's only had one suicide in the last 21 years. And someone said, I think the government has something to do with it, or law enforcement has something to do with it, or this guy's not dead, he's so rich, he's gone to, I don't know, Argentina. No one would call you anything negative. They would say, that guy's thinking straight. That guy is not a sheep. But in America, if we do that, we're called crazy crackpots. We may never get definitive evidence to our thoughts with this, right? But logic dictates that we need to look at this further than just accept blindly the narrative of an alleged apparent suicide. My thing is, brother, what's up with this apparent thing? Why was that so quickly so apparent? Like, don't we have to do a medical examination, a forensics analysis? I mean, hey, I saw an episode of The Wire where a guy, where they did a fake hanging of him. And it was, as one caller pointed out, they don't even tell us what material was used. We know that the bed sheets that they are given to these inmates in similar circumstances as Jeffrey Epstein, they're paper grade. Like, they're paper grade. Paper does what? So now we're saying he hung himself with his underwear? So a lot of rules, at the very least, a lot of rules were broken. At least from the monitoring by the guards to the surveillance films, all these things, not having a roommate, a cellmate, all these protocols were broken. Just so happened to be broken with a guy who's set to testify and has multiple millions, billions, some say billions of dollars at his disposal, who spent most of his time outside the country to begin with. So I don't think we're kooky. I don't think I'm kooky. I'm going to go to the next call, though.
Am I on the air?
Yes, you are.
I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm an ex-cop, ex-correctional officer, and ex-parole officer. So I think I know of what I speak. I had a couple things that I thought were important. You mentioned, Tim, you mentioned about the bed sheets. I worked in a prison a long time ago, but since then, I worked when a guy did commit suicide, and it is horrific. And they do reduce the staff when it's 11 to 7 shift. So maybe that's when he committed suicide. Again, we weren't given the time. Nowadays, they have something called, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're fine.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Nowadays, they have something, they may have the paper sheets. I wasn't familiar with those, but they have what they call suicide sheets, which is basically a thick sleeping bag. You cannot tear that thing apart. Also, I wanted to talk about the protocol, what you're supposed to do when a person is on suicide watch. You're not just watching the videotape. You are actually eyeballing the person. You are to walk over to that cell. We took turns. You walk by the cell, you eyeball the person, you go back. And it's not every half hour. It's like 10 to 15 minutes. You take turns. Another person goes, and you don't go regularly so that the inmate kind of figures out it's about time for you to come around. You kind of change it up. You don't want them to hurt themselves, so that's the big deal. So there's they didn't follow any kind of protocol that had to do with eyeballing the person. Then you go back to that central, I'll call it setup, where you can see all the different cells, and you write down into the log. There's a daily log that must be entered every time you look at that person. You go back and you write it down. Now, I noticed they haven't interviewed any of the correctional personnel, and I'm sure they were probably told to shut up. But you have to eyeball the person. You can't just depend on a camera. The other thing is these cameras that all of a sudden are not working, just like on 9/11, all of a sudden no camera's working. You would notice if the camera was not working. Let's see. Trying to make sure I got all this stuff out. The double body. Oh, yeah, the doppelganger or whatever. When this first happened and they said he was in a crouched position, fetal position, attempted suicide and all this, I knew that was a bunch of, am I allowed to say BS?
Yes.
It was a whole bunch of it. And I said, he's going to get busted out of jail because it's my understanding that Mr. Epstein is also Israeli Mossad. I'll probably get, now you're off the air. But anyway, they're better than our CIA. They're not going to let somebody go. They will get him. I'm sure they did. But they could have swapped him out on the initial transport. Maybe that didn't happen. But see, they kept showing that old picture of Epstein. You know, the one where he looks like a homeless bum. And I said, why do they keep putting that picture up? The picture was not his mugshot. You can tell the mugshot. They got the lines behind the people, so you can see how tall they are. This is just an ugly shot of an ugly old man or whatever, and probably made to look like whoever this double was, a little more so. You can Photoshop things. But when they had that old man on the gurney, if you look back at those pictures, I'm old now, but this is my cop sense coming up. I said, where are the man's limbs? I didn't see arms or legs. I saw a part of a head. And when you look closely and you compare those heads, because a lot of people have done this, you'll see that Epstein had a more, I'll call it an aquiline nose, a straight nose, didn't curve at the end. The old man on the gurney, his nose curved on the end. Eyebrows were different. And somebody was mentioning, I didn't know this, but the ears. Everybody has ear canals, or I'll say the convolutions in the ear are specific every each and every one of us, just like your fingerprints. They're totally different. And to me, my first call when I was a cop, LAPD, my first call was a triple homicide. So I know what a freshly dead, killed, I should say, body looks like. That body laying on that gurney was not dead. I was dead for a good while. At least that's in my almost professional opinion. So there was the body double. I call it the body double. They could have switched him out many a time. But now that I know that the video cameras went down and the correctional staff said they didn't look at him for hours, well, they could have taken it. They could have switched somebody out any time. But an opportune time would have been last week or whenever it was when he went to the hospital. How do you know that the people, what ambulance service was it? Of course, we weren't told. What hospital was it? Well, they didn't divulge that information. How long was he there? Well, we don't know. When did he come back? Oh, well, we don't know that either. How did he get back? How did he get back? You don't take the ambulance back to the jail. Well, they'd have to have like an armored transport vehicle. I'll say a transport vehicle, which anybody could do this. Show some fake IDs and some fake badges and just take the guy back. You're not really taking him back. You're taking back somebody else. And I know that's a lot of conspiracy theory, but there are things that could be conspired about to do. And then lastly, if I may say something about the media. All 6 or 7 major mainstream media services reported the exact same thing. When he had I call it the fake suicide attempt initially, they all reported it the same way. His neck was hurt. What the heck does that mean? I got a boo-boo on my neck. What the heck does that mean? It would have been written down as bruising to the neck, consistent with choking, but not a boo-boo, a hurt on his neck. I'm sorry if I'm shouting about this, but it makes me really mad because people must think we are really stupid. And I don't think he was killed. The whole fake suicide thing was to get us to thinking that somebody killed him. So now everybody's off the hook. The girls who had been raped and sodomized and everything else, they don't have to be scared anymore because he's dead. Oh, no. Not at all. He has been spirited away, as it were, by a team. He got too much information on people. Now, you don't kill a person like that. You use a person like that. And he's got enough money to buy everybody. Correctional staff do not make that much money, trust me. Anyway, those are just my thoughts. I don't want to keep taking up your time, but I think it was important for people to know that a suicide watch is exactly that. You must walk by that cell and look at that person. Then you have to go back and log it down. So I would want to see that daily log. And believe me, I believe heads are going to roll. That's all I had to say. I tuned in at the last minute, and I had put it on a timer to make sure I heard you. Anyway, thanks for all you do.
Thank you. Appreciate you. What an amazing phone call, man. That is what I'm talking about. This show is only as good as the callers, man. On Freedom Friday, and this is a substitute for Freedom Friday because we open up phone lines. I'm telling you, man, if it wasn't for great calls like this, to give you that inside information, I appreciate it. I was hoping I could find somebody like you to break it down. But I wanted to do this show anyway, and as fate would have it, karma or whatever, you called in tonight. I appreciate it.